Power gaming, but power gaming, but power gaming, but look at my list, it's so elite. Power gaming, but power gaming, but what are you going to do? I'm so fucking awesome because of my list.
Hello, welcome to FloridaMan40k. I think that's the name, right? Where we talk about today chaos and all the things that we love. I don't know. If you don't love chaos, get out of here. You don't belong in this world. I'll purge you later. Oh, wait, that's an Imperial thing to say. Don't do that. Here today, somehow I am stuck with your intro, the humble dumble Mark Perry, and today we have Jim Vesal and your normal host, John Lennon, Dan Smith, and the Jimmy Forever Prescott. Did I do a good job?
That was beautiful.
I love that volume and energy.
Yeah, let's bring Mark in for the complimentary intro for every episode from now on.
I'm about it.
I can do this.
I'm all about it.
Cool. So how's everyone doing?
I'm doing extremely well. Not everyone all at once. No, I'm doing well. Just enjoying my work from home quarantine. I have been in the same desk chair for the past 10 hours, so that's pretty great.
I'm great. I haven't put on pants for 2 days. Haven't left my house since Sunday. So
what exactly are you wearing, Jim? I would like this
boxers.
to. Okay.
See, I cranked my heat up to max and just walk around.
Man, I was hoping that would be a lot more exciting. We'd have a whole segment.
I was thinking, are you wearing like the remaining pages of all the Plague Bearer rules out there because they're dead? We don't need those pages anymore. Like make it like a little mini skirt out of Plague Bearer pages.
No, I have not quite. Sorry, Mark.
Oh.
I'm still visualizing it. Thank you, Mark.
You're welcome.
Jeez. All right. So I had the idea because I figured everyone's kind of bored at home, working from home and everything. I thought this would be a great opportunity to try to snag Jim Vesal and Mark Perry to talk some chaos because they both are better at this game than I am and better with chaos than I am. So instead of hearing from me, I figured we could hear from them.
Also, to truly embody the character of chaos, Dan decided to have 5 people in the same Discord chat and make something coherent. So we'll see how it goes.
Exactly. It's all according to plan. So, to dive right in, I figured, and to keep the chaos down a little bit, I'll start with Jim on this one. Jim, if you had to pick one unit right now that you just really like and wanted to build a chaos list around, what unit or I guess theme would you start with?
Right now, just like I know they're kind of boring, but like regular Chaos Terminators, I kind of feel like, especially depending on how you set them up, they have a lot of different play now, especially with some of the stuff from Faith and Fury. So you can go Emperor's Children for basically auto charges at a deep strike. You can go Night Lords or World Eaters for some pretty nasty ones in combat. You can go Alpha Legion. So they just have a lot of different ways that you can play them now. And depending on the faction that you're running them as, there's a lot of different kind of, it's one unit, but you can kind of get a lot out of it. So I really like...
One of the most flexible units in the Codex. Absolutely.
Yeah. And with their gearing, the way that they're able to gear, they're basically a Swiss Army knife. And, they're not obviously the most killy troops, the most shooty troops, but they're just a very solid unit. And at the new points cost since Chapter Approved, and I know obviously not much has happened since Chapter Approved, but they're I think they're like 27 points with a chainsword and combi bolter, so they're dirt cheap, and you can give all 10 models combi weapons, so you can make a pretty gross unit.
Yeah, I actually I have a soft spot for Chaos Terminators because and Lennon's probably going to give me crap for this, but the first GT that I won, that I bring up all the time, I had a unit of 10 Chaos Terminators, and they were so much better than I expected. They're just a little more durable than your opponent wants, a little more teeth than your opponent wants, and they were cheap then, and I guess they got a little bit cheaper now. So it's just they're a good, like you guys said, Swiss Army knife unit. And go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, in having inherent deep strike really gives them a lot of flexibility too, especially with some of the movement stratagems. Especially like you can start them on the table with Emperor's Children and then put them back up deep strike. Same with Alpha Legion. There's different ways to basically use them to psych out your opponent fairly easily. So I think they're pretty solid.
Absolutely. Even look at Charity Hammer. I took 10 of them in multiple of the games that you can go look at where I took the Red Butcher ones, and the Red Butcher World Leader Terminators were absolute monsters. To go ahead and put it down to like the World Leaders list draft that I took with the Terminators, we killed 6 Iron Hand Centurions underneath the Pharaohs and Apothecary bubble with the Red Butcher Terminators, and that was crazy. Because when you consider all the stats that you could just put on that unit from every single Legion, they're just so cool. And they're aesthetically pleasing.
Absolutely. And so, Mark, do you want to just break down the Red Butchers Terminators real fast for everyone and how they do what they do?
So the unit is going to be at 270 points when you buy it because you just want 10 dudes with the icon, the reroll charges, because you just don't want to fail that. You're going to have a Warlord trait for +1 the charge bubble, and just make sure you set that up correctly. But that unit comes down, and you just take it bare bones with Bolt or Axe. And really what makes that unit scary is it fights twice naturally. It's strength 6 with the chain axes. And then World Leaders have all these extra damage stratagems for whatever scenario you need them. Do you need an extra AP? Well, pay 1 CP for that. Do you want to be able to consolidate 6 inches? Pay 1 CP for that. Do you want Death to the False Emperor on everything, and then 5 pluses on Imperial units? Pay 1 CP for that. And that unit's so tough and durable that it can get some of these small... One of the weaknesses of, like, say, Berserkers was, like, they can grab and trap small units. And let's say back when we were kind of in a horde meta and just a lot of smaller bodies, was they had that free up armor save in 1 wound. It was kind of like I failed a couple free up saves because that just happens. And you just lose a couple Berserkers, and that messes with your math so hard. The World Leaders, the Red Butcher Terminators, don't have that problem with that 2 up armor save at 2 wounds. Makes them really hard just to randomly lose dudes. So, like, your opponent actually has to put legit firepower into that really cheap, efficient unit that could just put your opponent in checkmate, or it forces them to react a certain way that opens up more plays for you to interact with them in other places. It is a scary frit and a suicide bomb by all means. It can play defensively and counter-assaulty and say the CC mirror matches, but for the most part, you're looking at getting that terror out of that unit and the raw damage you can get out of that unit against most opponents.
Yeah, and one of the things that we'll talk about a little bit more later, too, is Chaos with the new missions especially. They do really well at, if you know you're going first, you can just overload the board and put all kind of threats down. Or, you know you're going second, you can reserve half your army, and the rest of it is either hyper durable or a small unit out of line of sight, something along those lines. Plus you have, like, Conceal your Alpha Legion, things like that. So you can be an aggressive list going first or a points denial list going second, and Terminators play into that perfectly. And is it World Eaters or Emperor's Children that also have the infiltrate strat? I know Alpha Legion obviously does, but one of the others, I can't ever remember which one.
So the Emperor's Children can redeploy a unit like an Eldar, pay 1 CP. The World Eaters have a 9-inch scout movement like Alpha Legion.
Yep. Yeah, so that works great. Basically, World Eaters, Terminators are like Alpha Legion Berserkers that can also deep strike.
Yep, exactly. And they're just much more tougher.
Exactly. Yeah, the extra wound, extra armor, extra everything. They're just better. And cheaper, too, which is kind of weird.
Exactly.
So...
and a random Perky Bolter to help out with that.
Mm-hmm. So that's just one of the many units we have, though, and we could probably keep talking about them, because you can run them Slanesh with Combi Plasma, you can run them World Eaters fighting 1,000,000 times. But another unit that I want to talk about, because they got real popular for a little bit, and then Grey Knights came out, and that is Possessed. Because I think Possessed are actually a lot better now post-Space Marine FAQ, even with the risk of Grey Knights. So I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are on that, and I'll start with you again, Jim.
Yeah, I think obviously Grey Knights are in a really good place right now. I think look, at the end of the day, almost every list has, I mean, maybe not the Leviathan list, but almost every list that you build out there has some really bad matchups. Now, in the case of the Chaos Possessed list, Grey Knights are a really bad matchup. So, just like if you say played a close combat Genestealer cult list, Eldar Flyers would be a very bad matchup, right? So there's lists out there that are gonna give you very tough games. And anytime you write a list to go to an event, you're making a calculation, depending on what the meta's like. So if you think that, maybe in your local meta, maybe you know that a little bit more. Obviously, with bigger events that you're traveling to, you might not know that meta as well, but you can generally get a sense of the meta just by looking at events globally. You can say, okay, well, if globally, 10% or 20% of players are playing Space Marines, there's probably a very good chance that at your local meta, 20% of the players are playing Space Marines. So you have to make those assessments, and I think there was a lot of panic among mini Chaos players regarding Grey Knights, especially as far as the Possessed Bomb is concerned. But the reality is that at most events, a 5 or 6 tournament event, you're most likely going to play one Grey Knights player, and there's a chance that you don't even play any Grey Knights players. So the question you have to kind of weigh is, do you not play your really good list on the off chance that you play a Grey Knights player, or do you play a really good Possessed list and then also bring tools so that when you do play that Grey Knights player, you have tools in mind. So for instance, the Grey Knights list is really good, but you have things like the Mirror that can reflect mortal wounds that could basically tank for your Possessed. You have things like cultists. So, maybe putting in 40 cultists or 80 cultists is not something you would have done in an old meta, but with Grey Knights, putting in the meta, maybe you throw a unit of 30 cultists in there or 2 units of 30. They've gone cheaper. That's 240 points. But if you can throw 60 wounds of cultists in front of your Possessed Bomb, that gives them 2 turns to kind of get in and do damage. Maybe combo with the Mirror to reflect back some mortals. That is something where you're going to make adjustments to your list to play in that meta. And I think there's a lot of people kind of screaming that Possessed are dead. They're still really damn good. And I think the hard part about Possessed is obviously just that there's a lot of failure points. I still like the Possessed list because when it gets all its buffs up and when it gets going, there gets a point to the game where if it's killed the right things and you've been able to remove the right threats, your opponent literally will have no ability to deal with it. I've had small units of Possessed, maybe 8 Possessed, go through people's entire army because, they threw their hammer into it or they threw their, counter unit into it, maybe killed half the unit, right? But there's still 8 or 9 of them left, and those 8 or 9 are able to counterattack, and then if they don't kill you outright, if they don't kill your Possessed almost outright, you only need 5, 6 Possessed to do so much damage. And they're so fast, and there's just so many other. Ideally in Chaos, you're going to have a multi-threat army. So maybe you have the Possessed, but maybe you also have those Terminators, right? And now all of a sudden, you're putting pressure on turn 2 from the Terminators. You got 60 cultists in their face, and you got this Possessed Bomb to deal with. And you're kind of in this situation where there's no good options for them. So I think with the playing those Possessed lists, you definitely need to have multiple threats. And I would definitely say that with almost every Chaos list, I think it's going to be really important that you have a really strong Psychic phase. So I would almost always go with 1,000 Suns detachment if you're going to run Possessed now. I know in the past the Word Bearers detachment had been pretty popular. But given the buffs they got in Psychic Awakening and just given the fact that Grey Knights are out there, you want your own kind of Psychic defense for fighting Grey Knights. And I think that's where the 1,000 Suns definitely in the current meta take the crown from the Word Bearers that we used to see in some of the lists. So that's my thoughts.
Yeah, and I'm glad you transitioned perfectly into the thought I had is the 1,000 Suns. You were talking about using cultists to kind of wrap Grey Knights specifically, kind of cage them in and absorb the smites, absorb whatever damage. Rubric Marines are great for doing that as well because they don't have the demon keyword. They have a good to very good invulnerable save, depending on the situation. Grey Knights kind of live and die on getting that one unit kill a turn and not giving up a kill in return. Rubric Marines are durable enough that they might just survive, and if they do, the momentum of that game has completely swung in your favor, just starting turn one. And you have the infiltrate strat. The Rubrics one is the old Alpha Legion style, so you can really box them into the corner even better. So there's some play there that I really like.
Yeah. And two things.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say, just two things.
Go ahead, Jim.
Two things to really keep in mind with the great thing about Thousand Suns is, three things actually. A, their cultists, you can still take 40 mans. So unlike Chaos Space Marines, Thousand Suns cultists, you can take 40-man cultists. Second, you can deep strike them into the webway. So if you need to put one whole unit in reserve and one unit on the table, you're able to do that. So you can start your 140-man on the table and put another 40-man in deep strike to come in turn two to create additional layers. So if you combo that, say, with either an Alpha Legion battalion, you can create, and then if you have another Chaos Space Marine detachment, you can Tide of Traitors your Thousand Suns cultists. So you can actually recycle one of the units, maybe bring it on like a backboard edge. So all of a sudden, all these Grey Knight units that were sitting back trying to smite you, their closest unit is now a unit of 40 cultists that are behind them. So now all their smites, they're either going to have to go forward to kind of come into your possessed, or they're going to have to waste all their smites killing cultists that maybe popped up on the sideboard and backward. So I actually really like the Thousand Suns cultists because of those reasons. And you can still kind of use a lot of stratagems from the Alpha Legion, the Chaos Space Marines on them as well. So I would definitely go like 240-man Thousand Sun blocks, and then sprinkle in whatever else you want.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And that for the Grey Knights matchup specifically, and I'll get into my next topic off of this as well. But in Grey Knights specifically, if they don't wipe out the cultist squad, you Tide of Traitors them. And if you have a demons detachment, even though the demons are taking a ton of wounds, if you go cultists and then demons, they smite all the cultists and then they shoot your demons. You can Tide of Traitors cultists and bring them back, and you can bring your demons back. So they put all of their shooting in, and maybe they kill a unit, and maybe they kill a unit of cultists. But if they leave one cultist alive, they didn't do anything. And if they do kill the demons, that unit comes right back. So you can really just overwhelm, because of the stratagems Chaos has access to, you can overwhelm that one bad matchup and turn it into a good matchup. And where I wanted to go with that is you had also mentioned the Contorted Epitome. So one of the pieces of tech that I feel just hasn't been very popular in the Chaos in 8th edition really is using summoning. I know you've done that some, Mark, so I'll probably let you talk about this a lot. But just putting 200 points on your sideboard to summon the Contorted Epitome, or to summon a bunch of Beasts of Nurgle, Pink Horrors you can split. I mean, there's so many just little tricks, and as more armies get Psychic Awakening and there's just more good armies, maybe it's not bad to have some reserve points and customize for each matchup.
I totally agree. There's a lot of cool stuff with all that y'all said. There's all those points are practically true. It's just one thing that goes in the Grey Knight thing also is remember that Grey Knights and the new mission packet, Chaos can get so fast, and it's like, let's say in that type of matchup, they can really press into them. I mean, a lot of people out there say that, that's a bad matchup. But the thing is, you can push into them that puts the Grey Knights so behind in points on mission-wise. And that's something that Chaos is really good at doing, is going for that early game pressure when it needs to do that to get those high-scoring points for the first free turns of the game, while putting the Grey Knights so far behind. Like bonus points, hold mores. Like, let's face it, if you just get hold more, bonus, and hold, and your opponent only gets maybe like a kill, hold, and probably kill more. But if you build your list where it makes it kill more a little harder to get on them, or just that kill period, it's really hard for them to get in there because they have to be careful because they can't overextend into your army to try to get some of those easy kills if you place them correctly on the board, where they may open up those paladins into a bad position into your army. And Chaos is really good at going on to opponents that overextend. because of how punishing they can be actually in close combat.
Absolutely. It's the reason I think people get intimidated because Grey Knights can go toe to toe with Thousand Suns in the psychic phase, but that also means that Thousand Suns are going toe to toe with Grey Knights in the psychic phase. And if Grey Knights if they fail just one key power, their whole plan might fall apart. So yeah, I agree where it's intimidating until you understand Grey Knights. And I think that's Grey Knights as an army in general. If you don't understand the intricacies of that army, it's going to intimidate you and you're going to lose in list design. But once you understand them, they're actually kind of easy to beat, I think. I mean, not easy. A good player is still going to kick your butt, but but they're easier. Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, and I mean, obviously, things also keep in mind is like Smite still needs line of sight. You know, like the guns don't need line of sight, but Smite does. So you can still probably protect your possessed at least the first turn, or you can get them into a middle piece of terrain from Smites. Second is that Thousand Suns have a lot of sniping power, so you know you could potentially pick up that brother captain that gives them the double range to reduce their snipes to 12 inches, and then all of a sudden you're going to outrange them on the Smites, and that's a big deal too. And then third, and I know we can't really talk about this yet, but the next Psychic Awakening book is got demons, so demons are going to get a pretty big, hopefully pretty big boost. Like there's no events happening right now, which means by the time that you probably play your next event, demons are going to have a book. So I think we're going to see a bit of a reemergence, and Chaos Knights as well, obviously. So I think we're going to see a bit of a reemergence of that, you know, those kind of possessed chaos lists with demons. Well, hopefully, anyways, that's my dream, because tired of Imperium winning stuff.
Yeah, and demons to me are just one of the most satisfying armies to build, convert, and paint, because you can do literally anything with those models, and if you're good at painting and you're a good modeler, they're going to look great. And it's kind of like orcs, but to me a lot easier to paint than orcs, where you just have so many, you can make it such a custom army, like it is your army. So I always like that when demons are good. So another, I guess two things that I want to talk about, one of which is just Thousand Suns, going into those a little bit more. You know, we've got the Cult of Time with the Demon Prince that can take the Hourglass to come back to life, which you can couple, like we were just saying, especially against Grey Knights, with the demons and the cultist stratagems where you can just keep bringing stuff back. You have Cult of Magic, which is just pure damage output. You can do the double explosion on your Terminator Sorcerer. And then Cult of Duplicity, I think, is the one I like the best, just because that being able to deep strike a unit every single turn is just incredibly powerful. And not deep strike, but pick it up from the table and redeploy. So, Mark, I'll start with you this time. Of those or any other, what is your current favorite way to play Thousand Suns?
So I really like Cult of Duplicity because of the redeployment. Honestly, most of all that tree is pretty good. Getting extra CP is not bad either. You want to take that relic, because like the Helm of the Third Eye can be kind of whiffy at times. It's either you're going to get a lot off of it or you're going to get none off of this with the math, and sometimes it's just not worth it. Where the whole 4+ you just get 1, I find that more reliable. Because okay, cool, I can plan for this turn, I may have an extra CP. I'll set it up where I can take advantage of it. If I can't take advantage of it, then it saves up for later if I get it. The never thing is, like, being able to Dark Matter Crystal and re-teleport is really big. Mm-hmm. And also being able to teleport after you smite things off the board. So let's sit there and say that, you know, they have all these screens set up for the smite screens that are just meant to zone you out, but they put down all their scouts. And they just zoned out your Rivet Marines to corner them. You can smite away and kill, you know, 2 or 3 units of Space Marine cultists, scouts, and then walk in. Then you can Cult of Duplicity into those spots that they were at. And then you're really taking advantage of, you know, it's like you went first, but you really actually technically went second, but you still have the same power as going first, as they try to zone you out. So there's a lot of cool positioning there.
Yeah, I agree. And especially bringing Rubric Marines, you can, if you go first, you can infiltrate a unit. Then you can Dark Matter Crystal another infantry unit, and then the Cult of Duplicity. Their psychic power is just a Cult of Duplicity Thousand Suns unit. It's not infantry restricted, so you can send your Demon Prince up if you want to. You can send. I mean, Demon Prince is really the only unit I think besides infantry that you're bringing in most Thousand Sun builds right now. But just the ability to apply that much pressure turn one just from that detachment and we'll get into this, we have a little bit already, but if you brought your Alpha Legion or your Word Bearers, Terminators, anything like that, you're putting 4 or 5 units in your opponent's face and telling them deal with all of this. If you can't, the game's over.
Yep. And it puts them so far behind it, and gives you so much board control. Like, that's really, I think, the reason why I like Duplicity is because the board control that I can get across all the turns of the game.
Yeah, absolutely. Because even late game, when you're straggling and you just have characters, you just, especially if you want second, you just call it Duplicity, send a character out, it holds the objective. Next turn they kill it, whatever. You still scored that point. You're still maintaining some momentum in the game.
Yep. Or if you're playing really passive, and like, let's say that you went second, like I was saying earlier, but instead of doing turn 1, turn 5 or 6, if you just need to do this for the win, you can Cult of Duplicity and Dark Matter Crystal 40 Rubric Marines.
Yeah.
And that's just kind of awkward to deal with in the late game.
Absolutely. Jim, what about you? Do you agree? Do you think Cult of Duplicity is your favorite, or is there one you like better?
Yeah, I definitely feel like it has the most play, and I think if you're playing in a possessed list where the damage is going to be coming from the possessed and maybe some other elements, you don't need if you're playing Thousand Suns as a Supreme Command, Magic obviously takes it, but I think with a broader selection of units, the Duplicity edges it out as far as utility, and the Cult of Magic it's really good on paper if you're just taking that Supreme Command. But if you're not actually using, because you can't utilize a lot of the other tricks of the other things, that's why it kind of emerges. But in situations where you have rubrics or cultists, the tricks for Duplicity like quickly overtake it as far as jank and like just being able to do a lot of things. So I think, and you don't end up missing like the trade-off of having the ability to redeploy and do some of those other tricks. Easily outweighs like the extra mortal wound that you might get and an extra +1 to cast. You already have a pretty dominant psychic phase, so there's a lot of diminishing returns there. So yeah, I definitely do like Duplicity as far as like in a battalion of Thousand Suns, maybe 2 units of cultists and a unit of rubrics, or 2 units of rubrics and a unit of cultists, or if you're using the Scarab Occult Terminators, which have gotten quite cheap as well. So I think definitely in a more robust Thousand Suns attachment, Duplicity definitely takes the cake.
Yeah,
I agree there.
Yep, and that was going to be the other thing I was going to say is if you do the Supreme Command Magic, but really the best screen for the Thousand Suns Supreme Command, I feel, is Rubric Marines. So then you go, it's cyclical, because then you end up, well, if I'm bringing Rubric Marines, I'm going to bring Battalion. If I'm doing a Battalion, it should be Cult of Duplicity, and you're back to Cult of Duplicity is kind of how I see it.
Yeah.
So here's another thing to talk about the weight of Cult of Duplicity versus Magic. Is one thing was really Magic was really good because like it helped kill out some of the Marine meta and just being able to do damage to those units. Where now you don't have to worry about that as much because like the Marines taking some of that hit, they're not quite as they're not on the same tier that they were. And the Cult of Duplicity, let's face it, the game is won in the movement phase and your ability to place models. It's not place an actual damage. If we were playing just a damage-only game, Manishima would have won LVO. We don't live in a play. We play in a movement-based game primarily, and Duplicity gives you more advantages in the movement phase and model placement.
Right. Especially combined with the Risen Rubric stratagem. So using that Warlord trait, being able to basically see who goes first, and then redeploy a unit of rubrics either into deep strike if you want to, back into defensive position if you want to, or in a super aggressive position if you want to. You're combining duplicitous tactician, which lets you redeploy D3 units, and also Risen Rubric K, which lets you deep strike a unit of Rubric Marines up to 9 inches away. And then now one thing I wanted to ask, and I can't remember if they FAQ'd this, but is it still the case that all these stratagems are still cross-faction? So you can still use the Thousand Suns Rubric Marine stratagems on, like, say, Alpha Legion Rubrics? That's still the case?
Correct.
Or did they FAQ?
You are right.
Yeah.
You click into that.
It currently exists, but by the time we can play events again, I don't think it will. But that is a good thing to bring up. I'm glad you did. If you want to go into some of that jank, Jim, just so people are aware in case it does survive somehow.
Yeah, so just one thing to keep in mind for everyone out there is that for most, one of the benefits of Chaos, I think it's probably the faction with the most allowance of this, is cross-faction stratagem use. So demons and Tyranids have special Snowflake FAQs that prevent like Tyranid and Genestealer cults being cross-faction. And then demons don't allow demon stratagems to be used on non-demon faction. But within all the Chaos Space Marine factions, so Thousand Suns, Chaos Space Marines, and Death Guard, as long as the keywords are the same, you're allowed to use cross-faction. So you can use, Veterans of the Long War from your Marines on, well, I guess they all get that, so that's a bad example. But for instance, you could use Tide of Traitors from Chaos Space Marine on, Death Guard cultists or on Thousand Suns cultists. And so there's a Thousand Suns stratagem called Risen Rubric K that the only keyword is Rubric Marine. So you can then take, and a lot of the stratagems have Rubric Marine. So Infernal Fusillade has is Rubric Marines. Dominable Foes is Rubric Marines. So you can use, like, say, a unit of Alpha Legion's Rubric Marines that are going to be -1 hit over 12 inches, that are still going to get all the benefits. And then you can use some of those stratagems cross. Now, in general, if you're running Cult of Duplicity, it's better to run them as Duplicity so you can redeploy. But say in that example we talked about where you have that Supreme Command of Thousand Suns, right? You have access to all those stratagems. And then say if you took your rubrics in your Alpha Legion detachment, because you don't get troop choices, obviously, in a Supreme Command, then you could definitely use some of those stratagems from your Thousand Suns detachment on your Alpha Legion rubric. So there's a little bit of crossplay there as well. So it's not obviously game breaking. I don't think. Like, I know some of those kinds of things, like the Salamander one, and they did FAQ because they were a little bit too good. But in general, like, I mean, they're mediocre / okay stratagems on a unit that is, probably like B tier. So it's not necessarily, winning tournaments on its own, but it does give you a little bit of extra utility in play if you want to set up your list like that.
Yeah, so the only abuse that I can see with that, or the number one abuse, is if you take Night Lords Rubric Marines, because you can infiltrate, move, and warp time even to get your charge, and then you use the Night Lord stratagems to prevent falling back, to turn off an aura. You just get into your enemy's lines and then shut down their ability to shoot the Rubric Marines and their ability to self-buff. And then I don't think we talked about this yet, but you can get Rubric Marines to a 2-up invulnerable save against damage 1 weaponry. So if you were to mix those, and it does require both Rubric Marine and Night Lord stratagems the entire game, if you mix those to stay on your 2-up invulnerable save against damage 1, and let's say you tagged Intercessors, or you tagged, I know the Leviathan's not as popular, but something like that, where they're just damage 1 weapons in close combat, they're just not going to kill you off quickly. You're holding them in combat. You don't need the Contorted Epitome at that point. And you literally can lock someone in their deployment zone, the top of turn 1, and there's nothing they can do about it. So that's the one abuse that I think is why it could get FAQ'd.
Right, and I think in general, Chaos has a lot of those kinds of rabbit holes where if you kind of really go all in with, multiple different stacking stratagems and stuff, you can create kind of these kind of trick combos. But I feel overall in general, for like a take all comers game, you're probably better off taking a more balanced approach, because in certain matchups, like say you're playing an army with like lots of flyers or vehicles, it can completely negate those tricks. And so, you kind of put all your eggs into this one basket, and all of a sudden, you're caught with too many points and energy invested in this kind of one kind of janky thing. And yeah, maybe it wins you 5 out of your 6 games, but on that 6th game, you play a Blood Angels army, and you definitely don't want to be that close to them. So all of a sudden, it's like, you've invested so many points in teching for that you end up with a worse generalist.
Yep, absolutely. And I come back to OBSEC in the current mission set is king. So if my Rubric Marines are Thousand Suns, their objective secured, I put them in your deployment zone on your objectives and say you got to outbody me. And I just think that's generally better than any of the other jank. Right.
One thing also, just as speaking of objective secured, so one other small trick, which I think it's not used very often, but it is something to think about. If you're ever doing a mixed battalion, so say you're doing a battalion, I know it's fairly popular with Thousand Suns characters. With Chaos characters, like you might have, and I know Mark does this a lot. Is like you'll have like a World Eaters dude, and then another Emperor's Children dude, or whatever. So all the cult troops, if they're from their specific legion, so Rubrics from Thousand Suns, Berserkers from World Eaters, they count as troops. So you can actually create a mixed battalion where you say, okay, my 3 units of Rubrics are Thousand Suns Rubrics, so they're troops. And then, not with the Thousand Suns Rubrics, but World Eaters is probably a better example. So in cult troops, basically, actually you can't do it that way. So you can basically decide that you want 3 units of Rubrics that are from Thousand Suns as troops, and then you take characters from, say, other detachments and create like a mixed battalion in that way. And that way, instead of having to say put cultists in your troop tech or normal Chaos Space Marines, you can actually use cult troops as your troop slots. So it's, again, small, very like kind of janky thing with like keywords and how the cult troops specifically work. But it's just something to keep in mind as well when you're list building. Yeah, because Chaos uses a lot of CP, one soup detachment. I think that kind of started getting popular with the Disco Rush, because there's so many good stratagems that all you need is one model to use it to deny the witch or whatever. So yeah, that's a great point. You make your soup command, and then you bring 3. I would do Berserkers probably, because you can get cheap units of Berserkers. They're not important to kill until they get close. So I think, yeah, that's a really good point. Again, it's a very like a bit of a rabbit hole, but it just gives you additional flexibility when building lists, which can be nice. Absolutely. Lennon, I know you've been kind of sitting back and letting us go, but you had a little bit of chaos you wanted to talk about as well. So you have the floor if you would like it.
Ooh, okay. This is definitely going to be me teaming up with Mark. I don't know how deep Jim has explored the Emperor's Children rabbit hole, but I know that he has talked about it. I have been high on Emperor's Children since Faith and Fury came out. However, I am not traditionally a Chaos player, so I was not confident that I was the man to write this list. But I really, really like Emperor's Children. I know that Mark Perry has been running the Noise Marines to some pretty good success up in the Tallahassee Trap House. My logic is that, damage to AP dash is good enough if you have a lot of shots with a lot of, with really good wound values, which pretty much anything can be with veterans of the Long War. And at that point, you have the auto charge, which I love. That's really good with both Terminators and Cultists. If you wanted to run an Emperor's Children battalion, I think you could do 2 pretty decent sized units, and then also have 2 decent sized units of Noise Marines, and then also have the 1 Cultist blob. And again, the ability to tie to traders that and pretty much auto charge. Fantastic. Being able to do that with the Emperor's Children Terminators, who are also naturally going to be Slanesh. That also does go well with the mixed battalion that Jim was just describing, because the Emperor's Children always fights first, and then you can combine that with like the little Death Guard units. The one that does the aura of Foul Blight Spawn.
Very
Mark, you're the one who brought me up to this. I'm going to let you take this one.
So the Foul Blight Spawn have a bubble that says, the start of the charge phase, enemy units within 7 inches do not count as charging this turn. They fight like they've already been engaged. Emperor's Children have a rule that says they always fight first, like they've always charged. Unless your ability has charge or has ability that says they act like they're charging, similar type ability. Well, the Foul Blight Spawn, what happens when you have like 30 orcs charge Noise Marines underneath the bubble of the Foul Blight Spawn and say, you don't fight first, you count like your regular combat. We always count as charging, so even when you charge us, we fight first. And it's a huge counter sense against like other assault armies or really movement phase aggressive armies. Because they can't just go running into you. And sometimes like some of these units are meant to be like these toolbox units that sit there and say, we'll roll one unit up in front of you, then we're going to shoot you with the other unit. Can't do that because if you start killing Noise Marines and your unit's right in front of them, they're going to die.
I know Jack Harpster was talking about doing that with his Harlequin. He'll just put one unit up there, but if he actually tries to kill Noise Marines, you kill the Harlequins, and then in your movement phase, you walk right through whatever they were trying to move block. That's a really good point.
And don't forget that like the list has a decent amount of second phases. Like it's awkward even so. Then if you just sit there and you just say, I'm going to move block you and just not kill you, I can second phase you off the board with those low model count fast units, and then I can just warp time still into position after I kill you in the second phase.
Yep, absolutely.
So,
I really wanted to take...
Go ahead, John.
Go ahead. Okay, I really want to take the Emperor's Children Terminators. Dan's an Obliterator man. I like the Terminators because it's a little pricey, but if you just go Chain Axe Combi Plasma, it's not as expensive as it could be because the Chain Axe is so cheap. And then at that point, it's actually a really good tool. What is a Combi Plasma? Is it 12 points?
I believe it's 11 points.
With Combi Plasma, so I think it's 12 points, yeah, because it's 25 base plus 12 for the Combi Plasma.
So really not that bad. So 35 points.
They're actually only 23 points based. They're 23 point base.
And then they...
Plus the axes too. Sorry,
the axe is actually 1.
Okay.
I just don't do anything with chaos. Ignore me.
I see it 340 for the unit. Let me go check real fast.
Yeah.
I'll either way, it's a mid 300. It's a mid 300 point unit. A lot of Combi Plasma means it's a great shooting threat. Obviously everyone knows, but Prescience Veterans of the Long War means it's hitting and wounding a lot. And then you can double tap it because Emperor's Children are naturally Slanesh. And then you're good to just go get right into combat. Because you've got the Emperor's Children stratagem, you can make good charges. I really like that unit, again, as a toolbox like Jim was describing earlier. That to me has always appealed to me a lot if I were to play Chaos. Plus, you got a lot of Slanesh stuff. You can very easily put the Epitome in there. Just a lot of these units kind of appeal to me. And then, it's Noise Marines seem really cool. It's an archetype that hasn't been explored heavily up until this point. So, I always like to try out new things. If I were to play Chaos, Emperor's Children would be it for me. And they also have an Ignore Overwatch relic for a character, so that always is valuable because Chaos does not have many Ignore Overwatch abilities. And sometimes you have units like Assault Centurions that are just really difficult to charge. You can try to smite them off, or you have other ways, but just having one more tool always feels good to me.
Yeah. Agreed. So the Terminators are they're 35 points total after Combi Plasma and Chain Axe. So it's 350 for the unit max. And one thing that I like is a lot of people, you're thinking you're just going to shoot the plasma, or your opponent might think that. With Prescience, your +1 negates the -1, so you're still going to get hot on ones, but you can shoot both profiles. And as Slanesh, you get a Psychic Power, Delightful Agonies to have a 5-up Feel No Pain. You can overheat, do whatever you want. I don't care. I'm still hitting on 3s, rerolling 1s with my Jump Pack Lord that's close by. So I might take a Mortal Wound or 2, and I'm getting all my plasma shots, and I'm getting a bunch of bolter shots, all at +1 to wound.
That's wrong.
I think plasma, you're slain. It's not a mortal wound, so.
Plasma's just dead.
It's like vehicles are mortal wounds. Models are generally with this, unless you're Tau, because you just break tools.
Yeah, I've been playing Tau. I've been playing Tau lately. I'm sorry, but it is slain. You're right. But get your Jump Pack Lord over there and reroll your ones.
Yeah,
I don't.
in that sense, you can overheat. You can in those cases where you actually want to overcharge, the bolter's profile is probably not adding much. So in those cases, I would just do the overheat and not fire the bolter profile, because you probably don't need it. Like, if anything, you're going to need an overcharged plasma gun. The bolter profile is probably going to do very little damage.
Don't also forget that you have the Dark Apostle for the +1 to hit from range.
Yeah,
so if you have that unit starting on board, the turns go right, you can easily give that unit +1 to hit and +1 to hit from prescience.
Mm-hmm. That's true too.
So, you can take that -1. Say what?
So God damn it, I miss playing Warhammer stuck at home. But now that I've been talking about it, I'm just, God.
I know. I want to play Chaos again.
Like, let me out. I want to go play.
One other thing I wanted to mention with Ember's Children is I really like the combat drugs stratagem, 2 command points per game. Correct me if I'm wrong, you can pick +1 strength, toughness, and like +2 inches of movement.
Or attack as well.
Or attack. Okay, so there's 4 to choose from. Any of those are awesome. Toughness 5 can matter a lot depending on, your opponent. Like if you're playing against Marines who typically have like a lot of strength 4, going to toughness 5 on a Terminator unit is a big deal. You get to the point where you're like a budget Blight Lord, where you become toughness 5. You can very easily cast a 5 at Feel No Pain. You have a worse invuln, I should say, but you're a lot cheaper than a Blight Lord, and you're a lot more reliable at making the charges, and you're a little faster. And you have the Slanesh advantage for double tapping in the shooting phase. And this can get a little CP intensive, but that's just the Chaos life, I think.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think under looking at unit also is its close combat abilities with the chain axe doesn't seem that bad until you start stacking the Emperor's Children buffs on them. You can pop it where every time you kill a model, you get 1 extra attack with that said weapon, and you can pop a CP to give it where every time they roll a 6 to wound, it's a -3 AP with an Emperor's Children unit or non-coldest unit.
Would that work with Veterans of the Long War to become 5 ups to wound?
It's natural 6s, sadly, not 6+. God forbid if it was 6+.
Okay, well, that's really cool.
One unit I want to talk about real fast, because it ties in with the fast Slanesh melee builds, is the Chaos Lord with the double lightning claw with the rapacious talons. That is one of my favorite models, and I like the Warlord trait for the 6+ are a mortal wound, because you can Veterans of the Long War and you naturally reroll your wound rolls. So you have on the charge 5 plus D6 attacks. Wounding on whatever, you're just fishing for 5s. You can get a ton of attacks, and it becomes AP2 damage too. So you have like a Demon Prince light profile that also can just do a bunch of mortal wounds on the charge. And I'm bringing a Chaos Lord anyway, so I might as well. Have you looked at that build at all, or do you think it's too much invested being a Warlord trait and a relic to get him to that level? What do you guys think?
Jim, you want to go first?
Whoever wants to, go for it.
So, to me, my personal opinion always, Chaos is kind of weird with its Warlord traits and relics. And it's a part of my philosophical belief. Like, I generally don't build beatstick characters. I just take beatstick characters. I don't generally build into them with my resources. I like to take any of those resources that I have that are choosable. I'm almost always going to choose support items, like support Warlord traits for my dudes, support relics. I'm generally always looking for those ones. I'm not sure worried about beatsticks because Chaos generally has a lot of easy beatsticks to plug into list. So it's cool. I'm honestly thinking it'll be kind of more cool on a Demon Prince where it's a tougher chassis. But if you're building a list and it's like you're sitting there, you're looking at the list and you're like, I don't really have anything else I can do for support because maybe I'm going a little bit more aggressive, or the support that I have can't be supported with these things. I probably will take a beatstick character, but most of the time it's going to be a support character because I just want the support for the units.
Yeah, and to add to that, like, the reason I don't love, like, outside of, if I can get something pretty sticky on a Demon Prince chassis, sometimes I will. But on any of the actual like 5 wound characters, the problem with a lot of the chaos characters, if you get them to like, you can make pretty killy chaos lords, but without a fight again or a fight twice, which they often don't have, or sorry, a fight again and fight twice, the same thing. I mean, a fight on death. You can end up very easily in situations where either they get sniped out, or maybe they never get to even strike and they die before they get to strike. So you got to kind of use them very, very conservative. You end up having to use them very conservatively. Whereas like with Marines, you can throw a Blood Angel Smash Captain, just YOLO kamikaze him into anything, and he's going to get his attacks, and he's going to be able to do lots of damage. So whether he's charged or charges himself, plus they generally have that 3+ invulnerable, which the difference between 3+ and 4+ invulnerable is such a huge difference. So I actually find the 4 or 5 wound characters pretty squishy. So I try not to overinvest in them, because a lot of times I've had them just and they only generally have about 5-6 attacks. They whiff, and then all of a sudden they just die, and they just do end up nothing. So and Demon Princes, they're awesome, but they get pricey, and you're most likely you're definitely only fitting three maximum per list, but most likely 2, a lot of times just 1. So and they're almost better from a utility standpoint over the course of the game than losing them turn 3 because you kind of shot them into something and then they just died. They're quite squishy themselves too.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
And honestly, I never like the. I never feel like I need the reroll one-strike Chaos Lord. If I take it in a list, it's generally because like I need it because it's either really cheap, like it's on a Demon Prince. It's already doing the same thing. It's a tougher chassis. Generally, it costs like it's just more utility, and the toughness for the points when you load up a character, the amount of resources from points, relics, flow traits that you put into a Chaos Lord for the points, but also points per wound. It's really the points per wound I don't like because it's just so fragile. I don't like Chaos Lords. I generally, if I take a Chaos Lord, it's because I have to have a jump captain for Host Raptorial, or I'm taking a character version. Like, I'm considering Lucius the Eternal for the Emperor's Shield right now.
I'm really excited. With that said, I'm really excited for the new Fabius Bile. The model looks amazing.
So good.
Yeah.
Hopefully he got some new juicy rules, and then I can take my Emperor's Children Terminators, give them combat drugs, and make them Fabius Bile super juice.
Yep.
That'd be so good.
Hopefully it's not as doesn't kill your stuff as much as it currently does, because it's too risky on like I would never use it on possessed. You lose quite a few. Although maybe that would be awesome. If you could pick it, that would be great. Almost like Dark Eldar combat drugs, that'd be a lot better. The randomness makes it hard to use.
That randomness makes it hard to use. Like I'm testing with it right now again. I used to do it back in the day in the early when the codex first dropped with Black Legion cultist spam with Abaddon. Because you just tides. Okay, I lost like 10 cultists because I rolled like 10 ones, because that happens. And I'm like, well, I'm going to tide you anyway. It doesn't matter. I get all my duffs back. I get all my dudes back. And then here we are. Deal with us. T4 cultists are hilariously harder to kill, or extra attack, or even extra strength in certain places. It's really good. Like, Fabius is really cool on like the currently lower small models, not the big models. Too risky because every time you lose one, it just feels bad.
Yeah, I think the first time I ever used Bile was when I was doing the Poxwalker farm. I stole that list from Leo. We steal a lot of things from Leo on the show. But I used him because I'd throw it on Poxwalkers. Like, okay, if they die, I'll just bring them back. So it was that it worked then. But yeah, now as we've moved to more of our elite choices, Terminators, Rubric Marines, etc., it's just the opportunity cost is too high.
With that said, just based on Fabius Bile, I'm going to speculate purely here. With Fabius Bile having that little familiar buddy next to him, I could 100% see him getting more reliable. I'm looking at it like the Gene's Third Cult Biophagus, who same thing, gives a D3 buff, might do some mortal wounds to the unit, and then if he takes his familiar, you get to reroll, or you get to roll 2 dice and choose on the buff. If that little familiar guy did that for Fabius Bile, that would really up
That'd
his
be really
value
cool.
in my eyes. But just something cute like that would be awesome, I think.
And hopefully his staff is not AP0. Like, hopefully he gets a little bit more combat, close combat ability, because his backpack with all the drugs don't really do much in combat.
No.
So it'd be cool if you had like almost like Tech Marines, how they have all the different kit that comes out of their backpack. So he had maybe multiple profiles, like he can saw you, he can inject you, maybe he has like a few different weapon profiles built into his backpack. That'd be really cool. Anyways, now we're wish listing, so probably off topic.
Yeah, that's all good. I think we probably end up talking chaos for another 2 hours, but I don't think the attention span of our listeners is going to last that long. So we probably should, I think, start wrapping it up. I did want to go over a potential list and some list theory and stuff, but I think we've run out of time. So I appreciate both y'all coming on, and you're welcome anytime. If you guys want, we can do a continuation over the next couple of weeks. I know it's real busy right now, everyone going out partying and everything you're doing out in public. But if you guys want, you're always welcome to come back.
Absolutely.
Totally. Thanks for having us on.
Yeah, absolutely. So if if y'all had anything else to say, go for it. But otherwise, we can wrap it up.
Keep safe out there, and make sure you're staying at least 2 meters away from people. And yeah, don't hoard toilet paper.
Be safe. Yeah. Be safe. Be logical.
We should let Mark plug. I don't know if Jim has anything to plug, but we should let Mark put a plug in for something.
Oh, absolutely. Mark, plug away. Always be plugging.
Wait, am I ending the show?
Oh no, I'm just like talk about Art of War. Talk about Art of War.
Oh, Art of War. Sorry. Okay, that plug-in. So now I'm like, plug in, plug out. Wait, huh? So anyone who's listening to this, me, Nick Ninavati, and Richard Siegler run the Art of War Twitch stream, and also just the war room and the coaching, yada yada. Look into it. We're making a lot of content right now. They're doing a daily paint stream with Siegler and Nick practically, and then we're having 3 games a week. 2 of them will open Twitch, and we also just we just hooked up where you have subscriptions to our Twitch page, so that'll be very much appreciated. Helps us gets us going and going farther into 40K, and just we're working on getting more and more, maybe more mainstream, but also just like that, we're working with the esports team about bringing it more mainstream. So let's move forward, guys. Help us out. I'm not good at this. I am passing it along now.
All right, I'll finish up that pitch. I'm also part of the Art of War team. I'm now available as one of the Art of War coaches. So certainly come check us out. As well, definitely check out their Twitch channel. If you guys have an Amazon Prime account, I would definitely recommend subscribing. You get 1 free subscription as part of an Amazon Prime account. So if you haven't used it for something, go toss it on the Art of War. They could really appreciate the support, and especially right now, we all want our 40K fix, but not a lot of us can play. So definitely now's a good time to be watching battle reports, listening to podcasts, checking out Twitch streams, just seeing what's going on. In their last episode, it was actually myself interviewing Nick Nanavati about his Tyranid army. So by all means, I think it was great content. You guys should give it a listen. Jim, did you have anything you wanted to plug?
No, I'm currently have not played in Warhammer since January, and currently holed up in my apartment. Playing video games, but thinking about Warhammer.
I know you got beautiful armies that you're painting and posting on your Instagram. You want to shout that out?
Yeah, you can follow me at JimboV_paints. I generally post all my Warhammer progress. I haven't posted anything in a while just because after they canceled Acon, my motivation was a bit dampered. So I've been just kind of taking a little break. I was painting basically 3-4 hours a night to get my army ready for Adepticon, and so I've just been taking a break, catching up on other stuff. But you'll see my progress. I always post work in progress and new photos there, as well as events I'm going to, which probably won't be a little while. So.
All right. Well, thank you so much for listening, everyone. I don't think we had anything else, but if you enjoyed the show, please let us know. Leave comments, criticism, feedback, all of the above. And check us out. We're on Facebook, iTunes, YouTube, Podbean, basically all the places that you can find podcasts, you can find us.
Yeah. Also remember that it is, I mean, if you're listening to this, you already know, but FloridaMan40k, there's no spaces. I feel like that we've heard a little bit of kickback on people not being able to find it, but I think that's been the primary issue so far.
no spaces if you're trying to find us on something else. But hey, for listening, you found it. So good job.
Yeah. Tell your friends.
Also,
I don't know.
share with your friends. Thank you, Jimmy. You and I are on the same page.
Yeah.
Let's get out of here.
Okay, no, goodbye,
Come
and
on,
have a
guys.
wonderful, hopefully not corona-filled weekend. Goodbye.
Goodbye!